that are just now joining, I think we can get started. I know we're waiting for a few more participants, but given that it's 5 after, we can just jump in. So thank you all for joining the webinar today. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website at the end. You all should have access to the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring that box throughout the webinar and answering questions at the end. So feel free to drop a question at any time. And just jump right in. So this is the ACT School Bus Fleet Deployment webinar to review the most recent RFP that MassDC put out for a third round of our school bus fleet deployment program. And just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Orly Strobel. I'm the program manager on our team overseeing the ACT School Bus program. Lila Hurd, who's our Clean Transportation Fellow, is also on today and she'll be helping to manage the Q&A box. So again, thanks all for joining. So we'll give a brief overview of the program, focusing obviously on the deployment program, but we'll also highlight our advisory services program, which is the other part of ACT School Bus. We'll go over eligibility for the program and how we prioritize applicants. Then we'll actually walk through the application materials and requirements, talk about our selection criteria, review the timeline and the kind of logistics behind submitting an application. And then we will save all of our Q&A for the end, but as I mentioned, feel free to stick anything in the Q&A box as we move through. So just for those of you who are maybe less familiar with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, or MassDC, we're a state economic development agency with the goal of accelerating the clean energy transition in Massachusetts. So we have several key program areas, including our transportation team. We do offshore wind work, grid work, buildings, tech to market development, many other things I'm sure I'm missing, workforce. But our overarching goal is really to be, again, accelerating the clean energy transition, getting us closer to a net zero grid, engaging in public-private partnerships. So lots of great work coming out, other than this program as well. So just wanted to highlight the overarching mission of the ACT School Bus program. As I mentioned, this is an umbrella program, so we're going to focus on our fleet deployment program today, but we do also have that advisory services program. And really the conception of the ACT School Bus program came from 3 existing projects that we had under the first clean transportation projects at MassDC. We had a few smaller scale electric school bus projects and found from those projects that school bus electrification is complex, it's costly, and it's something that even if you have the resources to do it, it can still take a lot of time and effort and financing. So we really, when EPA came out with the Clean School Bus program, wanted to create a state program that would really amplify the Clean School Bus funding and make sure that school districts that received that funding would be supported in succeeding with their projects. And we have since broadened the program a little bit, so it's not just schools that receive the Clean School Bus funding, but we do focus on schools that are prioritized under EPA, really with the main goals of increasing access to clean transportation and decreasing the health impacts on vulnerable populations, such as the student body. We want to make sure that our deployment projects are replicable so that school districts who are currently in our deployment program have lessons learned that can really be, again, replicated throughout the state. We want to make sure that our program is effective in communication with community partners. And so we really strive to improve the program each year, receive feedback from our current cohort and make sure that we're implementing that as we move forward. And then we really want to make sure that the program is also representing school districts across Massachusetts at various phases of the electrification process. So school districts that are ready to deploy, but also school districts that are maybe just looking to get started in the electric school bus space. So as I mentioned, just wanted to give a quick shout out to our advisory services program, which is not the focus of today's webinar, but as I just mentioned, we are very aware that school districts are coming at school bus electrification from different starting points. And so while some schools may be looking to deploy and really start on those projects, we also have many school districts in the state that are interested in just kind of understanding what electrification looks like, what would a full-scale, full-fleet electrification project entail. So our advisory services program is not a grant opportunity, but it is a completely free electrification planning service where we work with up to 25 school bus fleets, and each participating fleet gets a customized electrification report and hands-on assistance from our technical consultant. So that report looks into feasibility designs, financial modeling, supports with procurement, and eligibility for the advisory service program is very similar to fleet deployment. So a school district can apply directly. We say apply, but it's really more of a enrollment process because again, it's not tied to funding. Or a private transportation provider can partner with the school district and basically submit their interest in this program. So we do prioritize school districts that are on the EPA priority district list and third parties that are partnered with school districts on that list. But we also have an overarching goal of geographic and ownership model diversity. So, we really want to make sure we're hitting school districts across the state, schools that own their buses with third party. So we currently are still enrolling in this program. We have 9 slots left. So if you are interested, I recommend that you reach out. And there will be a slide toward the end of contact information, both for deployment and advisory. So you can always take a look at who to reach out to. And just want to highlight that eligible applicants can certainly apply to the deployment program, but also request to participate in advisory. These programs do support slightly different aspects of electrification. So advisory is a great resource if you're looking for more of a full fleet transition plan. And then moving through to our deployment program, which again is sort of the purpose of this webinar today. So hopefully you all are somewhat familiar, but this is a formal grant and technical assistance opportunity. This is the 3rd round of the ACT School Bus Fleet Deployment Program. So we're currently running our 1st round and just awarded school districts under the 2nd round, and this would be an application for our 3rd round. So under this round, we're providing up to $2 million in flexible funding per award. We have not specified how many awards that we're going to provide under this round. It really just kind of depends on funding. And the main goal of this program is that you'll have electrified at least a portion of your fleet by the end of the program, and you'll be more prepared to fully electrify your fleet in the future. So as I mentioned, the benefits of this program are that you receive grant funding, but also technical assistance, and that's a pretty unique and important aspect of this program. So school districts that are participating can get basically as much hands-on technical assistance as you kind of deem necessary for your school district. And that assistance includes, support and infrastructure build out and procurement, selecting charging stations. There's also a certain amount of data collection involved just to help you understand your own kind of financial modeling. And again, we do offer that funding, which is intended to be flexible funding that can support with either actual materials, so school buses with the chargers, but also can support with depot upgrades, staff time. And then here's just a link to our request for proposal document and highlighting that the proposal does close on June 24th. So just about a month and 10-ish days, a month and a week to submit those applications. So just to review our eligibility. So as I mentioned, kind of very similar to the advisory services program, the applicant for this program must either be a public school district, which is defined by any school with an NCES district ID, or a private transportation provider can apply on behalf of a Massachusetts school district, as long as it's very clear in the application what school district the provider is working with. And we will give preference to school districts that are on the EPA priority list or have received funding under this rebate round of EPA Clean School Bus. But we are, as I mentioned, also really have that goal of geographic and ownership model diversity. So if you haven't received EPA funding, but you have a really strong case for a good project, still could be a good potential proposal. Or application, I should say. And I do just want to mention with our funding, so it's up to $2 million, as I mentioned, but we don't see this as entirely standalone funding. So either you probably need to have received some sort of federal funding, or maybe funding through a private partnership, or through your school district directly, though that's certainly not required. So we don't have any sort of minimum cost share requirement, but it's just kind of inevitable that with a project of this scale, you will likely need to secure funding from another source as well. Then just wanted to actually walk through the application, and I know we have a decent number of attachments in the application, so I wanted to kind of walk through what you actually need to be submitting to us versus what is just for your reference. So the first attachment in the application is just a list of the EPA Clean School Bus priority districts under the 2023 rebate. So again, this round of ACT School Bus is intended to complement that 2023 rebate. So that's completely for reference. And then attachment B, the authorized application signature and acceptance form, is something that we do need you to submit to us, as well as attachment C, which is the actual application form. So all of those questions, that's the meat of your application. That's what we'll be reviewing. And attachment D, which is the proposed budget. We will share some screenshots of what that looks like, but we have a template for the budget that we ask you to use when submitting, just so we have kind of standardized budget throughout our application. Then for attachment E, which is the proposed site plan, this is something that we have often questions on, like how detailed the site plan needs to be. Answer is it does not need to be that detailed. If you have a site plan that is detailed, it's great for us to see that. But if you just have some screenshots or a few pictures, that's totally fine. We're not requiring some sort of like architecture drawing of your site. Just want to kind of get a good understanding of what your site looks like. And then attachment F, this is the sample grant agreement. And it's just to be very clear that we just require a signature that you have read over the sample grant agreement and understand the conditions under a potential grant with us. But you by no means need to be fully marking up the grant agreement, providing us a formal signature. It's just a signature to let us know that you have read and understood what that agreement looks like. And if you have any questions on the application process, you can always contact our shared inbox, which is cleantransportation@masscc.com. And I can put that in the chat at the end of our webinar so that everyone has that. But we check that inbox regularly and we'll get back to you pretty promptly if you have any questions. So in terms of timeline, our application is currently open and available. And we have a formal question and answers period. So on May 20th, we have questions due if you want to have them formally responded to and posted on our website. So those are due to our Clean Transportation inbox. We will respond to you within that week and we'll post the questions 1 week later on our website. So you're more than welcome to ask questions, after that May 20th period, but if you want them to be formally answered and posted on the site, that's when you need to submit by. And then our application, as I mentioned, is due June 24th. 4 p.m. and we will likely award grantees between July and August timeframe of 2024. And I will just add that in between the applications due period and the award notification, we will hold interviews for applicants that are for consideration. And then just wanted to walk through and really highlight the different attachments. So under attachment A, this is a screenshot from the EPA priority district list for the 2023 rebate. So just for your awareness, these are the school districts that are prioritized under the EPA 2023 rebate. So if you were one of these school districts, you're highly prioritized under our program as well. If you are not one of these school districts, we still really welcome you to apply, especially if you are in an environmental justice community, if you've received EPA funding, if you have a school district that's in a more rural location that we need to support. So we do want to know that it's not just these school districts that we are reviewing, but these are the top priority school districts. And then this is just a screenshot from attachment C, which is our actual application, to give you a sense of what kind of questions we're asking. And as you can see, really want to highlight our application is intended to be very much in line with EPA Clean School Bus application. This is in part because we want this application to be accessible. And so if you've already submitted a Clean School Bus application, you should be pretty familiar with these questions. If you have not, it just helps us to standardize, across our applications. So for schools that have not submitted to Clean School Bus, that application is also fairly straightforward. And we just ask you to use EPA's attachments so that we can their templates so that we can make sure we're getting standard information across school districts. And then just wanted to highlight our budget table. So again, you can request up to $2 million. So the request cannot exceed $2 million. Again, we do not have any minimum cost share requirement, but we do expect that the $2 million cannot cover the full cost of a project. So there's no minimum, but depending on what you're trying to complete or accomplish under the ACT School Bus program, you'll likely need to consider, other funds as well. And then this is just a screenshot of what the budget looks like. So we ask you to put in the source of your funding, how much you've either received or requested under that funding source. And then we've broken up our budget into direct labor costs and then a few other costs, but these are just some examples of things that you could be, requesting from us. And so when you go into the budget template, there are a few example lines that you can look at. If you have any questions, more than happy to answer and make sure that you are understanding your budget template before submitting an application. And then these are just some commonly asked questions that we wanted to make sure we're providing an answer to today. So one is, can the ACT school bus funding be stacked with EPA Clean School Bus funding or other federal programs? So the answer to that is yes, and that is really the intent of our program. So we do not have stacking requirements, meaning that we allow you to stack with other federal programs. The only thing to note, which is not highlighted here, but likely we'll put something on this in the Q&A document, is that if you are receiving funding under the Make Ready programs with your utilities, so specifically National Grid or Eversource, those utilities under the DPU do have stacking requirements. So Mass EC ACT School Bus funding cannot be stacked with Make Ready funding due to the utility stacking requirements. So if you do have questions or concerns about funding you're getting from the utilities and how that will work with school bus funding, we are more than happy to answer that. Kind of the basic answer here is that any sort of infrastructure funding you're getting with the utilities cannot be stacked with Mass EC infrastructure funding. And then another question we get is really about the use of the buses. So for multifunctional buses that are used for athletic trips and field trips, those are eligible for electrification, but the buses also must be used for a school route. And that's because we're really trying to, of course, reduce emissions as much as possible. And buses that are used for daily routes are obviously producing more emissions than buses that are used now. And then in terms of the eligibility of bus types, any type A, C, or D electric school bus is eligible, as well as a type D. And one other thing that we wanted to highlight, which is a little bit separate from this program, so just to be very clear, this round of ACT School Bus funding, which is round 3, is intended to be paired with EPA Clean School Bus 2023 rebate funding. But we just want to make sure that everyone is aware that EPA recently came out with a Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle program. And this program is in part providing funding for school bus electrification and will essentially replace the 2024 grant round of Clean School Bus. So rather than the upcoming round of electric school bus funding for EPA being Clean School Bus funding, it's going to be Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle funding. You'll be able to find a link to this on the Clean School Bus website. So EPA is trying to make it as clear as possible that you should be applying to this program opportunity, link to that application process. We're working with EPA to see how accessible this application is if you've already completed a Clean School Bus application in the past. So hopefully it will not look super different for you. And the eligibility requirements are very similar for school districts as they are for Clean School Bus program. So either a class 6 or 7 school bus can be replaced with electric. Still the 2010 or older diesel power buses. I will note if you don't have 2010 or older diesel power buses, you can do the 2010 or 2011 or newer, or an ICE vehicle. They're the same kind of scrappage requirements as with Clean School Bus. The minimum number of buses per application is 10. So that is something to note. Same with the EPA Clean School Bus grant programs. The minimum bus requirement is higher than for those rebates. And this is just some information on the cap per vehicle amount, which again should be pretty in line with what you've seen from the past EPA Clean School Bus grant rounds. The one thing I do want to note, which is not on this slide, is that I believe transportation providers are not eligible to apply directly to the Clean Heavy Duty program. So those applications do need to come directly from school districts, but you can partner with your transportation provider on that. And we can get clarification from EPA that is correct, but that's our kind of latest understanding. So the due date for this is July 25th, 2024. Again, separate from our ACT School Bus application, not in line with this round of ACT School Bus, but we do hope to be able to support school districts who receive this funding in the future. And then, as I mentioned before, we're really here to support you if you have any questions, so please reach out to us via our shared inbox. And then if you have questions on our advisory services program, which I highlighted at the beginning, these are to focus on our consultant team. So our lead consultant is BEIC. So you can reach out to Alex Pine at BEIC or Anna Brackenhofer, who is part of one of the subcontractor teams. She's also helping with recruitment. So if you're familiar with Power Options, you can also reach out to Anna. Either of those folks can certainly help you if you're interested in advisory services. And I also just want to offer that if you want to contact me directly, you can certainly do so. My email is ostrobel@massec.com. And now I'd love to leave time for questions. So we can give a minute for people to ask questions. I do see one in the chat right now. So it says, we are an independent school. Are we ineligible for this funding opportunity? So if you are an independent or private school, correct, you are not eligible for this funding opportunity. This is intended for public school districts. I will stop sharing the screen and give a few minutes for people to ask questions. Another question, are there resources for private schools even if funding isn't available? So this is a good question. Through the state, because obviously we're a state entity, we are focused on public schools. We do have a program through MassEC that I hope I'm kind of answering this correctly. We have a Mass Fleet Advisor program, which is similar to advisory services, but it's focused on medium and heavy duty fleets in private sector as well as nonprofit. I'm not 100% sure if public or private schools are eligible, but I would assume so. So that might be something to look into. And Lila, if you want to answer that anonymous one on the resources for private schools, if you could send the link to our Mass Fleet Advisor program and put it in the answer, that would be great.
Okay.
Another question was, is there a minimum number of vehicles required to apply for the ACT School Bus Fleet program? No, there's no minimum requirement, so you could apply to just convert one bus potentially. Another question, how much in total funding is available this round? So yeah, we kind of went over this, but kind of not, so no worries, did not miss anything, but we are capping the award amount at $2 million per award. We have not specified how many awards we'll be able to grant. It's more just a question internally of how we are able to spend our funding. So unfortunately, that's not information available from RFP. Is this a competitive grant? Yes, it is a competitive grant. As I mentioned, we tried to make it a very accessible application. So really the competitive nature of the grant is really more about the kind of demographics of your school district and whether it's a school district that would be prioritized based on that, the EPA priority list. Just giving a couple more minutes if any other questions come in. So Lila, maybe if you want to stop the recording and then we can just stay on for a few minutes if any other questions come up, and make sure we're answering those questions. But for those of you who need to jump off, thank you so much for attending. We hope this was a helpful webinar. As I mentioned, we will post the recording on our website and try to highlight these questions in our Q&A document as well. You know, please feel free to reach out to our Clean Transportation email. I'll put it in the chat again, just so